Our first presentation is from Misha Anstari. Misha is a professional physiotherapist who is currently pursuing her Ph.D. at the University of Tasmania. Her research is centred around the use of exercise to manage blood glucose levels in individuals with type 2 diabetes mellitus. Misha earned her Bachelor and post-professional physiotherapy degrees in Pakistan, where she also worked as a clinical therapist and taught as a lecturer at ISRI University in Karachi before starting her PhD program here at the University of Tasmania. Misha has entitled her talk, Downhill Walking, a Way Forward in Blood Glucose Management in People with Type 2 Diabetes Mellitus. Please welcome Misha Anstari.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'll begin my presentation by acknowledging the traditional owners of this land on which we meet today. I would like to pay my respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. So the topic of my research is diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus is the most prevalent silent pandemic of the 21st century. It is a metabolic disorder which is caused by elevated levels of glucose in the blood. It is caused either by disruptions in insulin secretion in the body or by the disruption in the actions of insulin on the body cells. So this slide is about the prevalence of diabetes world over. Over 537 million adults aged 20 to 79 worldwide are currently living with diabetes, accounting for 10.5% of the population in this age group. Pakistan, from where I belong, which is shown as that dark red color, is the country with highest prevalence. Approximately 31% adult population lives with diabetes. In Australia, 1.3 million adults are living with diabetes as reported in 2021. Indigenous Australians are 3 times more likely to suffer from diabetes as compared to non-Indigenous people. So you know this, it has got a lot of this disease after COVID-19 is spreading more because of our sedentary lifestyle. But what is diabetes? Every cell in the body needs energy to survive, to do work. For example, our brain needs energy to think. If I have to move my arm, my muscles needs energy to move. From where does this energy comes from? This energy comes from the food we eat. Nutrients from the food we eat are released from the digestive system into the bloodstream. So from the digestive system, the nutrients are released into the bloodstream, as you can see here. From the bloodstream, one of these nutrients is glucose. From the bloodstream, this glucose has to travel. It is used by the cells in the body to give us energy to work, or it is stored in muscles or liver to be used as energy for later. But unfortunately, this glucose cannot be absorbed by the cells on its own. It needs a hormone, insulin, which is produced by pancreas. So basically, insulin acts like a key to open this lock for the glucose to be absorbed in these body cells. What happens in diabetes is either the body is unable to produce enough insulin, as in type 1 diabetes, or the cells of the body become resistant to the actions of insulin, as in type 2. So if the body is not able to, if the cells are not able to take in the glucose, which is used for energy, it will lead to disruptions in the body. Approximately more than 90% cases of diabetes are of type 2 diabetes. And there are various risk factors which contribute to diabetes. The prevalence of diabetes is influenced by a complex interplay of genetic, metabolic, and environmental factors. There are certain non-modifiable factors which we cannot modify, and there are certain modifiable risk factors. Ethnicity, family history, previous gestational diabetes, and older age are among the non-modifiable risk factors. Certain ethnicities such as African, Hispanic, Native American, and South Asian communities have a higher prevalence of genetic variations that predispose them to insulin resistance. Other modifiable risk factors include obesity, unhealthy diet, sedentary lifestyle, and smoking. So we can work on the modifiable risk factors, but we cannot work on the non-modifiable risk factors. Diabetes is not just a disease affecting one organ in the body. If left unchecked, it leads to affect all the major organs in the body. It can affect your nephrons in the kidney, leading to nephropathy and ultimately kidney damage. It can affect eyes, leading to retinopathy and ultimately blindness. Similarly, it can affect the nerves, leading to neuropathy, or it can also cause sores in the body or even like in foot and ultimately lead to amputation. So it's not just a disease, it has got effects on all the major organs in the body. So it's important to keep the blood sugar levels in control even if someone has got type 2 diabetes. So as I talked about modifiable risk factors such as diet and exercise, new research, various research has shown that 58% reduction in incidence through lifestyle medication, lifestyle intervention as compared to 31% by metformin. Like they conducted a study in which they assessed like is lifestyle intervention like physical activity and exercise helpful in preventing people to have diabetes. So from among two groups, one having metformin and the other having lifestyle intervention, 58% less people in the lifestyle group had diabetes as compared to only 31% in the group having metformin. Another research study reports exercise was found to be just as effective as diet or diet plus exercise in reducing the cumulative diabetes incidence rate compared to the control group. So we know that there are certain modifiable risk factors such as diet and lifestyle, and we know that exercise helps manage blood glucose level. Still, 71% of population with type 2 diabetes do not follow the physical activity recommendations. And there are certain reasons that maybe they perceive it as difficult, they consider exercise, they don't have the motivation, or they consider exercise to be physically exhausting. So what could be the possible solution for this problem? I think that finding exercises which are perceived to be metabolically and physically less demanding for the body could lead to better adherence with exercise. So in this slide, you can see two types of exercises. One person is walking downstairs and the other one's climbing up. Or if you think about walking downhill or walking uphill, which do you think is better in terms of being less physically demanding on the body, or which is easier? Walking downhill or descending stairs is easier. It is not causing as much effort on the body. Yes, that's also one factor. But generally, if you have to descend stairs, it is a bit easier as compared to climbing stairs. So walking downhill, if you can see in this figure, so when we are walking downhill, what happens is our muscles are lengthened. Whereas when we are walking uphill, our muscles are shortened. So this walking downhill is called an eccentric exercise, whereas walking uphill is called a concentric exercise. With this idea, we explored more about eccentric exercises and are they beneficial for the healthy population. And different research has shown that eccentric exercises improves physical fitness in people. Physical fitness means the ability to move about and around and do things. It has been found to have effect on blood glucose levels. Eccentric exercise has shown to improve insulin sensitivity. It has been found that eccentric exercise leads to better blood pressure. And also, it has been found that eccentric exercise improves muscle strength, which is very much important for the age group which have diabetes, like elderly people. It's important to have strong muscles and have good physical fitness. Being a physiotherapist myself, and with this idea of trying to look at exercise which are easier for people to do, we planned this research at University of Tasmania. So the research had three components. Number first was to assess the effort, like how much effort is required to perform this exercise. Like if I am lifting my arm up, how much effort I'm putting to lift my arm up. And if I'm bringing my arm down, how much effort is required for my arm to come down? Is it like more while I'm taking it up or less? So the first component of the research was to analyze the effort we put in the exercise. The second one was effectiveness. Okay, after the effort, is this exercise really effective in achieving what we are trying to achieve? Like, is downhill walking effective in managing the blood glucose level of individuals with type 2 diabetes? And the third point was acceptability. Like, okay, if we have looked at the effort and we have seen the effects of this exercise, would people will be willing to do it, or how much is it acceptable? So I conducted a clinical trial, and it had three arms. So the research was conducted here at University of Tasmania Launceston campus. We recruited 28 participants. Initially, the idea was to recruit around 42 people, but because of COVID and other restrictions, we still managed, thankfully, to enroll 28 participants. There were people with type 2 diabetes not involved in any structured exercise training. So the first part of the trial was to analyze the effort, that how much effort they are putting. So we did an experiment, and you can see here a person walking on a treadmill downhill, and we had an apparatus which was metabolic cart to measure. This apparatus was to measure it is an automated gas analysis system, which measured how much body was working when a person is doing an activity. So we made participants walk flat and then uphill 4, 12, 4, 8, 12, and 16%, which was this much steep. And then we made them walk downhill 4, 8, 12, and 16%. And through this machine, we got the results about how the body was working when they were doing that activity. So this is the result from the first experiment. This shows a curve. Here you can see the grades of the treadmill, like flat 0, 4, 8, 12, 16, then -4, -8, -12. And this is the energy expenditure, which is given as an oxygen consumption in ml per kg per minute. Or you can say that energy expenditure is usually otherwise measured in kilojoules. So we got this J-shaped curve, which shows that the energy expenditure while walking uphill was almost 4% more than walking downhill and level. So from this first experiment, we got those findings that downhill walking is easier for the body, because when you're walking downhill, the body is using less effort or less energy, is expending less energy. So this is an easy to perform exercise compared to walking flat and walking uphill. With this, we also studied their heart rate, that what was the heart rate while they were performing that exercise. And we rated their perceived exertion on a scale by asking them, how are you feeling, right? So we got the same results for them as well, that they perceived uphill walking as the heart rate was higher while participants were walking uphill, and the perceived effort was more when they were walking uphill. So after the first part, like we studied the effort, how much effort is with which activity. The second was to see the effect. What is the effect of this exercise on the body? For this, we designed a clinical trial. And in this first, what we did, we enrolled those participants and measured their baseline body parameters, such as we measured their HbA1c, we performed oral glucose tolerance test, measured their fasting blood levels, we measured their muscle strength, and we measured their arterial health through an apparatus. Later, we divided the participants in 3 walking groups. One walking group performed flat level walking because this is the usual practice, what we usually do. The other group performed uphill walking, and the third group performed downhill walking for about 12 weeks. After 12 weeks, we analyzed all these parameters again to see if there was a change from the baseline or pre-training level or not. Here in this figure, you can see that we measured the muscle strength through this Cybex dynamometer. We measured the knee extensors and flexors, isometric and isokinetic strength. We measured their arterial health through pulse wave velocity and pulse wave analysis. And then we also performed some other measures of physical fitness, such as 6-minute walk test, timed up and go test, and 30-second sit to stand test, which all measures the functional fitness of an individual. So the results from this trial, uphill walking group had a significant improvement in their HbA1c, a significant reduction in HbA1c, which shows that it was a positive outcome for uphill walking group. While doing a per protocol analysis for the downhill walking group also, there was significant improvement in HbA1c, significant reduction, which means that uphill and downhill both were effective in reducing the blood glucose levels. Among the 3 walking group, only downhill walking group had a significant improvement in systolic blood pressure. Means the participants in the downhill walking group had a reduction in their systolic blood pressure. Their blood pressure reduced after the 12 weeks training. For other measures of physical fitness, such as timed up and go test, 6-minute walk test, 30-second sit to stand test, the downhill walking group had significant results. All these physical fitness parameters improved for the downhill walking group only. And for muscle strength, which I've shown that we measured through a machine, it also improved post-training for the downhill walking group. So we measured the effort required, like how much effort is required to perform the exercise, and then we see the effect. What was the effect of the exercise intervention? The third part of the experiment was to assess the acceptability or the motivation. At the conclusion of 12 weeks exercise intervention, 5 participants selected by convenience sampling from each intervention group were invited to participate in semi-structured interviews. Interviews were conducted to explore the awareness of participants about exercise utility in managing blood glucose levels prior to participation in the intervention and their experiences of participating in the intervention. So a lot of themes were generated from the data. I have just included few significant or important highlighting themes from the interviews. The majority of the participants reported receiving insufficient information from their health practitioners at the time of diagnosis about the utility of exercise in managing blood glucose levels. Health practitioners including doctors, nurses, and diabetes educators. In contrast, the information delivered to participants was mostly around managing blood glucose levels through healthy diet. Participating in the exercise intervention led to multiple benefits. At the conclusion of the trial, participants reported improvement in physical parameters such as pain, self-measured blood glucose, blood pressure, and psychological parameters such as improved well-being or mood. Another significant finding from the interviews was that participants reported that the way they are managing their overall health has improved. Like few participants reported that they have started checking their blood glucose levels more frequently, or they have started adding certain things in their lifestyle, such as parking their car further away to walk, or opting for healthy meal choices. Behavior change. Another theme which emerged from the interviews was behavior change, since most of the participants who were involved in the trial were not involved in any structured physical activity before. Majority of them reported that they will continue to exercise once the training finishes. So that was another important highlight, that being involved in a structured training could lead to behavior change in this population. Uphill walking was considered as challenging by the participants who performed them, and most of them reported that they would not like to do it. Whereas downhill walking was considered more favorable in terms of acceptability or more achievable. So the practical implications from this research, we have studied the effort involved with the training, which shows that it is perceived as easier, not just by what participants told us, but by calculating the energy expenditure by doing an experiment, the first part of the study. Like downhill walking is perceived as easier, it is less demanding on the body compared to even walking flat and uphill. The other one is that downhill walking can help manage blood glucose levels. It improved, only the downhill walking group was the one which improved the muscle strength and physical fitness of the individuals. Muscle strength and physical fitness are important parameters for an independence of an individual. If someone has got a good muscle strength, they're able to do their activities of daily living independently, which is a factor in enhancing the quality of life. If someone has got a good muscle strength, it will prevent them from falls. It will let them do the activities they want to do independently. So it could contribute to an overall better quality of life by not exerting as much as you're exerting in the traditional exercises. Another point is downhill walking can be performed in the outdoor natural settings where there is a track available, or it could be performed in multi-story buildings with stairs, with an access to lift to go back to the starting point. So it is practical in terms of that way. You could do it when there are stairs available to practice. So downhill walking will descending stair walking or walking downstairs will have the same effect as elaborated by downhill walking. And the other point was, another theme identified was limited education regarding the utility of exercise. So by improving education for people with type 2 diabetes by their primary health practitioners can lead to significant change in the practices. That's all. I would like to thank the Royal Society of Tasmania for giving me this opportunity to discuss this research with all of you, and University of Tasmania for giving me the opportunity to carry out this research, my research participant, and my supervisors. Any questions?
We have a few minutes for questions. Thank you.
I have three concerns. One concern is the size of the study, and it strikes me as it would be sort of indicative and would have to be followed up with a large group.
Yes.
It's just too small. The second is, I wonder how you got your participants, because if you're going to generalise from the study, and I've already cautioned against that, you have to be generalising from the type of people who became your participants to perhaps different types of people who were not your participants. So that was the first concern. The second concern was the downhill stuff. All very well. I've got hills around my place, but I don't really have lifts to go uphill. So, the trouble is you've got to get someone, either you've got to go uphill sooner or later, or someone picks you up, drives you up to the top of the hill again, down you go again. It strikes me as perhaps an impractical exercise regimen in that respect. The third one was concerned with the behavioural changes. The literature is pretty solid on short-term behavioural changes, lovely long-term behavioural changes fade away. So I wonder if it's worth doing not as part of the doctoral research because you're constrained by time, but in your own life later, doing a follow-on with the same participants if they're willing to engage and see what just stop doing it?
Yes,
Will they
yes, yes.
die?
Yes, thank you for your questions. The first one was about recruiting these number of participants. The initial planned sample size required us to recruit 42 participants, but because of COVID impacting the research, we could not recruit more participants. And we did the study at that time when COVID was everywhere around, but Tasmania had its border shut, so we were lucky. We didn't had any COVID, and we managed to get this much participant. While publishing the findings of this research, we will present it as a pilot data, and so that people could utilize it to design future studies. In terms of generalizability of these findings, we could not generalize it as such because of the smaller sample size, but we are presenting the data as like a pilot trial. The third point which you have mentioned is a good one. That's the trial was not designed to follow up in the long run, and it was not designed initially to see if there will be a behavior change. It was one of the themes which emerged from the interview questions. Like we did not specifically assess that how much behavior change will occur, but it came up as participants reported that they will continue exercising in general because most of the participants, they were not initially following the Australian physical activity guidelines. So we cannot say that we can generalize this in terms of all the people who have got diabetes, but it's just a pilot novel data as a first step to present, which if someone else wants to carry forward and build their research on this one could prove useful. In terms of practicality, yes, downhill is not achievable because if someone hasn't got the hills, they cannot do it. But as I mentioned, if someone hasn't got the hills, if they've got an access to a building, they can do descending stair walking. People who have got type 2 diabetes generally have got other comorbidities as well. Someone can have a heart condition or a lung condition which can limit them even walking on flat surface. They get breathless by walking after 5 or 10 minutes. For such people with low exercise tolerance, poor exercise tolerance, who could not even walk flat, can walk downhill. With another issue with the practicality, if another larger study confirms our findings, we can present recommendations to the industry which manufactures treadmills to make such treadmills more accessible in which a person can walk downhill. We just had one treadmill in our university to practice downhill, which was also a limitation. Like, we could just do certain number of people with one lab, having the classes scheduled to run around as well. So, if our findings confirmed by a larger study shows that downhill is effective and not only effective, is more effective than the traditional exercise, we can, recommend to generate such treadmills and make them more easily available.
Any other questions? Yes.
I have something show up on my newsfeed this week about diet and exercise is only beneficial in half the people with type 2 diabetes and one subtype, which I think was, it might be fast intolerant versus glucose tolerant. But I wonder, it might be, I know you've got small numbers, but you might be able to show a trend or something. If you took out the cycling, I think does benefit from this. It might make your results stronger. I was going to say about going downhill. I know it's a bit mathematical system, but you can catch a bus. I used to catch the bus up to the reserve and walk back with my Spanish teacher every day because you're walking downhill, you can talk at the same time. and can I just do a shout out for electric bikes? I don't like exercise, but it's just boring and not enjoyable. But getting around on electric bike is, they already know it's as good exercise as non-electric bike. So, and it would probably be able to do a natural experiment on persistence of the behaviour because you could follow up on people who already have electric bikes and see whether they still ride them.
Well, last question.
I'm one of the victims. I got type 2. I found exercise very good. I'm very pleased to see the generally what you're saying is the exercise is important, and that's how I felt with it. Exercise does help, and really what we should be doing is, yes, there's a great emphasis on diet. Once you fix the diet, and I have fixed the diet, the next thing is the exercise, and then try to cut back, try to see an improvement in your blood sugar contents, and that's what I am seeing. So thank you for the background.
Thank you.
Dr. Abbott.
Thank you, Misha. We're delighted to say that Australia is not one of the worst places in the world for type 2 diabetes. Nevertheless, it's epidemic here. Years ago, we had a visitor from the United States who was talking about their epidemic of it. And he produced a beautiful slide which would be nice for you to have. It shows a Midwestern farmer of some substance walking his dog. He's driving a pickup truck. He's got his arm out the window and the dog is walking alongside. Launceston, of course, as has been pointed out already today, is a perfect place for walking downhill. What we have to do now is persuade MTT to run special diabetic buses free of charge. And then everyone can walk down. I think that we should advocate this as soon as possible.
Our second presentation is from Stan Kane. Stan founded a software development company, which is called Point Duty. He did that in 2004 with an initial mission to help track a flow of child abuse material over the internet, pardon me, and assist law enforcement to find the perpetrators. That company now has a broader data capture and analytics function. And he did that after he got his Bachelor degree in computing from the University of Tasmania. He has coupled that with a diploma in mechanical engineering and diesel fitting apprenticeship. And if you put all that together, it gives him a unique insight into boundaries between information technology and the real world. Stan is currently at the Australian Maritime College working on his PhD. He's going to enlighten us this afternoon with his talk called Using AI, Artificial Intelligence, to Improve Safety at Sea. Please welcome Stan Kane.
Thank you. Hello, welcome. As was just explained, I'm going to try in 20 minutes to give you a bit of an insight into into my research. It's a unique area for me as well, as a degree in computer science, touching on a number of different areas. So firstly, what are we going to do? So what we want to do is capture vessel motions in a sea, then convert them to a sea state, which is made up of wave height, wave period, and wave direction. And then we'd hope to deliver that information back to relevant people. So whether it's to the crew or to other stakeholders who may not be on board the vessel. As the title of the talk mentioned, safety, excuse me, safety of life at sea. So why do we do that? So if we go back in time, I'm sure you're familiar with the Titanic and the terrible loss of life that happened there when there weren't enough lifeboats for all the people on board. It did act as a trigger, a catalyst to really quantify all the things that we could do as as users, engineers, operators, and designers to make that sea safer. So one of my areas that I'd like to focus on is to ensure the safety of the vessel, the cargo, and the crew by understanding more about the sea state that they work in. Now, how we go about that is, as I mentioned, we're going to use a few different disciplines: maritime engineering, machine learning, and I've just taken the liberty of putting those guys up. They're all the sort of early practitioners in each of those areas. Mr. Nyquist is a friend of mine because I'm using some of his stuff to trim my data into a way that the machine learning algorithms will help me up to digest it and make sense of it. But and as they say, as we start off on a journey on a PhD, that we're standing on the shoulders of giants who have come before us, and I think there's a good example of that in those people. So I'm using a design cycle. It's a modification of an intelligence cycle, which is my day job as well when we're working with law enforcement or intelligence agencies. So basically what we want to do is, someone wants something done, so that, and we'll give it down to a planning area, which I'm going to do. Then we move into data capture, data curation, and then loop through model exploration. So that sort of loops around there until I've got a model that is working as we would like, and then we're going to create a production version as a PhD. I'm then going to write the paper on it and submit it, but that production version of the algorithm will go back on board the ship to provide the required data to those people. I'm always reminded of there's an old rabbit stew, I think it's in a recipe from the 1800s, that says, first catch your rabbit. That's the first line of that. Excuse me. In this, for me, it's catch your data. So we're going to capture the data in 6 degrees of freedom. So that, as you can see there, there's sort of the translational sort of heave, sway, and surge. So there's sort of straight line movements of the vessel. And then we have rotational moments around each of those. And also gain access to other data from NEMA 2000. In modern boats, there's a bus that's carrying extra information, and that's going to give me things like GPS, course, speed over the ground. First, to do that, I had to build a box that did that, so a data capture system. The idea was to keep this into a low-cost realm so that we have many of these boxes around the fleets of the world capturing this type of data. Low-cost Raspberry Pis. I'm not sure if you know too much about the Raspberry Pi, but they're a tiny little computer, fully functional. They run Linux. I was able to get a NEMA 2000 extension for that, which is on top, and put some things in like M.2 solid-state drives, tiny little drives with 250 gig of data storage, because these things could go to sea for quite some time. And they've got Wi-Fi and USB on there as well, so I can log into the boat. So the trick is to put that on board a vessel. Now, our first example is the bluefin model. Well, the AMC actually had a real-size version of the bluefin, and they've got a model of the bluefin that I could use in the wave basins. Murphy's Law being what it is, they've now sold the bluefin, so we're sans the bluefin at the moment. But my supervisor, Michael Woodward, is here today, and he's working hard to get a model of a vessel that still exists, or that we still have access to. So, for those who haven't been out there, this is the wave basin at the AMC. At the far end there, there's these very clever pieces of machinery that generate waves into this basin, and they can do that in a very accurate way. So we can dial up that we want a 1.2 frequency wave of this height. Of course, the direction is down the tank. So we can capture the three areas of data that we'd like. So if I press the button, this may work. Yes, it does. And so my data, the data capture system is there, capturing those motions. When you see the vessel acting like it did, I think the bluefin was known as the vomit comet, and you can probably see why if you were in that. That's not a very big sea, but it was reacting quite severely. So you can imagine, so this is what the data looks like as it comes off that box. So I've got a few different timestamps there. There's a cute Linux timestamp on the left that is a clock that's been running since Linux was invented in 1970, so that's a nice baseline. They like to use that. we've got the real date and time. And also I've got a monotonic time, which is the time since that data capture was happening. And then across the screen there, we've got the 6 degrees of freedom. So X, Y, and Z in translational, X, Y, and Z in gyro, in the rotational. So now, as we go into the machine learning land, we need to be able to train our algorithms to understand the data that we're going to give them. So one of the ways that we did that was I built a small software interface that I can replay the videos from the tank and then identify what direction the wave's coming to in relation to the vessel. So that one there is showing that it's coming at 180 degrees, that's going directly into the waves. So that wave's coming 90 degrees across, so the vessel was traveling sideways. So in the same screen, I can input the wave height that was generated, so I know the system is very good at generating these waves. So I can input the wave height, I can input the frequency, and I can also input the direction that it's hitting the boat at. Okay, so well, now we've got our data curated, if you remember from the cycle. So we've captured the data, we're going to curate the data, and now we're going to bring it into the machine learning environment. Now, it's a pretty broad term, machine learning, so, and there's lots of different algorithms in there. The example there is a neural network, and I'm tempted to try and explain how that actually works, because I was speaking earlier, and people, machine learning is a black box science to most people, but it was very good if you're into differential calculus and you're looking at the rates of change of certain things on graphs, you know, the slope of the line. You're looking for a maximum or a minimum. So in our nodes there, you know, we've got our inputs, the feature extraction, and then the first lot of nodes. You can see the connections there. They're many-to-many connections. Basically, what the algorithm's trying to do is to find the minimum error between each of those nodes based on the outcome, so that we're telling them that the wave height is 1.2, and it comes up with 1.8, and we say, no, that's wrong. So it's going to be changing its weightings on each of those until it can get as close to that one. And so that's how it's learning. So that, in a neural network model, that's how machine learning works. It gets worse as you change away from that, and it becomes very difficult to explain how they do it. But that's if you have an understanding of calculus and how those slope of the line can work from maximum or minimum, that's what we're trying to do there. Okay, so as far as the output, so I'm coming up for confirmation of candidature in I think January, Michael, and so we've been working through this phase with the data. We're now starting to get some outputs from the machine learning, and so this particular output is one where the blue line, which is hard to see there, we've calculated the frequency that the vessel is seeing as it drives around that tank. So the frequency is 1.2 in the tank, because we know that because we put it in there. But as the vessel goes into the waves, it's going to shorten that frequency. As it goes with them, it's going to elongate that frequency. And so we've calculated the frequency that the vessel's seeing from a thing called fast Fourier transform, which is from that traditional naval architecture area. They always work in the frequency domain. So we've used that in a little 5-second bursts to give us a frequency across that time. As I mentioned, we also modified the Nyquist sampling rate to get rid of some erroneous signals that are in the data. The vibration from the prop was in the data as well, so we didn't enjoy that too much. So we've just played with Nyquist to get rid of that. And now we've trained the algorithm. This time it's a thing called XGBoost. It's not the neural network that I showed, but it's a different type of algorithm. And so firstly, we gave it data and said, this is the frequency of the data that you're seeing, and then we run it again without the cheat sheet. So you tell me what the frequencies are. And so this is its attempt to give us the frequencies. I've got to say I'm pretty happy with that. That's that's mapping pretty closely to the results from the fast Fourier. And we can, having curated the data, I can now, I'm probably running it across 10 different algorithms, and the outputs of those will give me what features are working well in a particular algorithm, compares the results of different algorithms with each other. But at the moment, this XGBoost it's a more modern algorithm. As some of them have been around a while, but it's going quite well. Okay, so where do we go into the future once we've done this magic research? It seems like we've got the frequency going okay. We do actually have wave height and direction sorted to a reasonable degree at the moment. But so what we'd like to do with this as it goes forward, as we say, we want to make the life of a ship captain easier in terms of keeping cargo, passengers, and the vessel safe. Build a little beauty of being a software guy is you can do stuff like this. So I've built a little dashboard that's showing other data from the NEMA 2000 bus. So I've got the engine RPMs, I've got the amount of fuel on board, got my acceleration over the trim, but over in the top right there, this is actually what we're after. So we've got a relative wave direction from what the vessel is seeing and what direction the algorithm thinks that the wave's coming from. Then we go to the wave height and the period, and so with an example of this is, say, a vessel is travelling at night. There's actually a pretty good example. In 1989, a vessel was caught in a storm, got into this thing called parallax motion. I think it was a mental blank there. But anyway, so what it had was it ended up breaking the constraints that were holding the containers down. At 1,300 containers above deck, 300 of those went over the side, another 300 were damaged. At the time, it was the largest container accident in the world. Since it's been passed by that. So with that in mind, the far part over there is a traffic light representation of how close that vessel is approaching those design limits for either the passengers, the cargo, or the ship. So that's a bit far away from me at the moment in terms of achieving that, but that's a goal that we would like to do. Now, that was that last slide was on board the vessel, and we say, okay, so that's helping the ship captain to make operational decisions and decision support system. This is a map of all the ships that are off the coast of Australia and north. I think that was yesterday. So there's quite a few there, and they all have a system on board called AIS. So it's an automatic identification system for ships, and if you hold it over any one of those, it would bring this type of data up. This is freely available on the web if you want to Google it. And so at the moment, it's giving us the ship's name. It's, down the bottom there, it's giving us the things like its the course and the speed. AIS is a nice piece of kit in as much as it's pinging that data out all the time. If it's going straight, it does it every 3 minutes. But as it starts to turn, the ship becomes a little bit more dangerous to other ship around it, so it will start to ping more often. So it gets down to every second or so. So that's pretty good, and that works well. But so into the future, though, what we'd like to do is then add this sea state information to that AIS transmission. So this is just a mocked up one with waves coming from the north or west. The wave height 2.5 metres and the wave period 25 seconds. In terms of forward planning, the modern skipper has to undertake a load calculation before he leaves port, map that across to what the likely conditions are on their route, and to decide whether the ship's stable before they leave port. So with that, with all the AIS transmitting the sea state, putting it up onto the web, he has instantaneous access to the weather on route. So that's the, I think that's the end game for our research as we progress. thank you.
So Stan Street had some questions. Is there any from the floor? Any questions on the presentation?
You mentioned you had a number of algorithms in play up to PhD, so to speak, rival candidates to see which one of them handled things best. I have two questions about that. One, are you able to tweak a given algorithm so that it works better? That's the first question. The second is, if after all of this, algorithm X worked better on parameters A, B, C, and algorithm Y worked better on parameters P, Q, R, can you combine them?
Yeah, definitely. So to both questions there. So in terms of there was a part of the slide that mentioned the features that we build into the data curation. So we've got our 6 degrees of freedom data, just the pure accelerations. We can also add other data in there, and we might derive some of that from the 6 degrees. And so that is in essence improving that algorithm. It's probably in machine learning, it's where your intellectual property resides in the feature development. And so if you can develop features in a way that makes that algorithm perform better for your task, because these algorithms do many, many different things. So you're actually sort of tuning it to work in a particular area. So that's probably what I'm doing in terms of curating the data. So once I've got that sorted, then whether it's a random forest algorithm or there is literally hundreds of them, but the different systems that we use, TensorFlow or Google AI, they'll have inbuilt algorithms. And so we do that in terms of building our IP into that area. So as part of the outputs from each of those, we then get what features are working best in the areas. So we might, as you say, need to run 2 algorithms to get the thing that we want. That frequency one that's a good outcome. It may not work well with wave height, so we'll run a separate algorithm that does meet that.
Does your research help new designs of ships? Because I noticed on some of the cruise liners, they've changed the shape of the bow. Instead of being forward, it's back. Is that to help with the seas they're going through?
This is not my area, but there is a couple of guys in this room that would be well able to answer that question. But no, I'm it's almost like a reverse angle to what you're talking about. So Michael and Martin would be designing vessels to operate in a sea state. So they'll have modelled sea states they're going to design against. Like John Swap is one example where they've got, I think it's the North Sea in winter as a model that they design their ships against to operate. And so they're going to say, if I design my ship this way, this is how it's going to behave in the John Swap sea. So I'm a little bit reverse to that. So I'm saying this is how the vessel is behaving. What sea state caused that? So it's just really the reverse problem. So I'm not. This work isn't really involved in the design process.
Any other questions? But it obviously has implications for how it intersects with other.
Well, it's sort of in terms of our goals is to keep everyone safe on board. You hope that the guys in at the design phase can do their bit, which they are very good at. There's been the occasional error, but yeah, so we're just sort of really as a check and a balance. One of the examples would be when a wavelength is approaching half boat length, that parametric roll can occur, so that we can tell the skipper that he's approaching that. So he can change speed or change direction, and that changes the encounter frequency of the wave to get away from that condition. Or if it's really bad, just run away.
Right.
Yeah.
One last question, anyone? Mark, where are you? I've lost him. Martin Reynolds? Oh, there you are.
Thanks very much, Stan. It's been a very, very interesting presentation. I visualize a situation. You showed all these dots, ships everywhere. They're really wave probes, as you've been trying to say. And so just like we can use our GPS in our cars to say how long it's going to take us to get somewhere because we know what the environment's like, what the other traffic's doing, this will be able to tell us what the waves will be when we produce contours and what have you of the different sea states as you've been explaining. It looks really exciting. The only thing, of course, is I don't know what you did to make AMC sell bluefin, but certainly is, you have to find another ship. But thank you very much indeed. It's been a really interesting presentation. Thanks for coming down all the way from Austin to do it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.